The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast.
Hello there, and welcome to The Force of Others. I'm Matt Beutner.
And I'm Zachary Owen Turner, and today we're talking about a lot of things, including writer George Nolfi on the new Jedi Order inspiration, Francis Ford Coppola inspiring Han Solo, and we're going to interview Mr. Beutner here, so stick around for a big episode. Before we get to all that, though, Matt has a little special message.
Well, today, the release date of this episode, February 7th, is the 26th anniversary of Star Wars podcasting. Happy Star Wars Podcast Day to all of you that celebrate. It's an opportunity for all the Star Wars podcasts to come together and celebrate what we do. Jedi Talk, the very first Star Wars podcast, premiered on February 7th, 1999.
Who knew podcasts happened back then? What were you listening on? Were you listening? Did you record a tape and send it to somebody's Walkman?
That's exactly what it was. Zach, were you listening on a... wait, now how old were you on February 7th, 1999?
1999, I would have been 6.
I was almost 10.
Yeah.
So now that we have aged ourselves and aged Star Wars podcasting in general, we would like to welcome you to this show. If you're new, what we like to do here is we like to interview people. Today we're interviewing me, but we interview lots of different Star Wars fans. We see Star Wars as such a universal property and universal story that we both love seeing all the different perspectives on this universe because it can mean so many different things to so many different people. But we'll get to what it means to us in a little bit. Zach, steering this back to you, how was your week, and how did Star Wars find you this week?
It was a busy week. Star Wars did not find me that much. We're in full audition season here in New York, on top of the day job, so... You know, we're tired. But good week, good auditions. And I did listen to a little bit more of the Rise of the Red Blade on my commutes to work, which I'm really enjoying so far. I just got to the point where I didn't know that this was canon, and this is very cool, but the Jedi Knighting ceremony of all of the Padawans after the Battle of Geonosis, including Anakin Skywalker, happening just like, okay, cool, we're in a war now. Those of you who've lost a master, you're Jedi Knights now, and figure it out.
Yeah, I love that, for sure. I remember that moment in that book, because it was something that... In Legends, I think Anakin was knighted in, at least we saw it on the Gendy series.
Yeah.
The 2D series.
By the will of the Force.
By the will of the Force, by the whatever, I don't remember what else they say. But I love that in that book, it's this moment where Mace Windu, if I remember right,
it
is like, hey, we're going to war, so you all get to be knights now.
Yeah.
Congrats.
If you're over 18, you're a knight now, basically, and figure it out.
Figure it out. Good luck. Go fight some droids.
Yeah.
Well, right on.
What really shocked me is he goes, you're all Jedi Knights now, and some of you might be getting Padawans. And you're like, whoa, we are moving quick. All right.
Yeah.
And which really, I mean, it adds so much context to the Clone Wars, but yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I love it.
What about you? How was your week? How did Star Wars find you?
Well, I very, very similar vibes. Worked a lot. A little bit of insight into me. My academy, run a theater academy, and our semester is in full swing as of last week. I got back from Atlanta. All the classes started, and then we're going on another festival trip this week to California, taking my younger students. So it's lots of busy times. Star Wars also did not find me because I got the stomach flu. So I basically was a zombie this weekend. So I wanted Star Wars I wanted anything to find me other than my stomach.
You didn't pop on A New Hope, like in bed with some electrolytes or anything?
Honestly, I remember thinking about it, but I was just so sick that I basically just kind of curled up into a fetal position and just whatever was on was on. Mm-hmm. So my wife likes a lot of true crime and murder documentaries, so that's a lot of what was on this weekend. And I was just like, life doesn't have to be this depressing. But anyway... All right, so that is our weeks and whether or not Star Wars found us, and it didn't. But it's going to find us now on our happy little podcast. So, Zach, I'm giving it over to you for some news.
Yeah, so we got a little interview with George Nolfi on the new Jedi Order inspiration. George Nolfi, if you don't know, is the new writer tasked with writing the Rey movie with Daisy Ridley. Quote here from the interview, which we found was the most interesting, is the perennial story of human beings organizing themselves and against chaos, and then the tools that help human societies tamp down on chaos becoming oppression. So that is really very core to what I think George Lucas was trying to talk about. And one of the wonderful things about science fiction and Star Wars, which is more almost science fantasy or space opera, is that you can raise the deepest issue without it feeling like a philosophy class or a political science class, or something I read in the newspaper today. It can be about real things, deep things. And boy, does that get me excited about him writing this movie. I don't know about you, Matt.
Yeah, I don't want to say that there's a right way to look at Star Wars and a wrong way to look at Star Wars, but the way that I look at Star Wars is that, right? When I read that he said it's science fantasy more than science fiction, I was like, yes.
Yeah, I was like, also, he gets it. Great.
When he was talking about how you can get into deep issues and deep philosophy and like political problems without it being a philosophy class or a science class or something in the newspaper, I was like, that's the whole thing. Like, yay, let's go.
Yeah.
So it makes me very, very, very excited for him to be added onto this movie that we were worried about might not be happening.
Yeah.
So who knows? It might still not, but hey, yeah, I'm stoked.
Yeah, I'm excited that somebody writing it gets it. Because it is space opera, it is fantasy. Other parts of the interview he talks about, George really did talk about a lot of political things, and like, it's important to talk about those things, but you can also do it with a little grace and a little bit more about just being real.
You can do it with a little more like kind of some universal ideas.
Yeah.
Instead of getting super, super, super specific. But it's kind of the J.J. Abrams of it all, right? I love Force Awakens. That is a very, very charming movie with just a skosh of Star Wars philosophy. Not very much. Could have used some more. Last Jedi, bunch of Star Wars philosophy. So much. Not all of it that I agree with, but it's mostly that.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, not really a lot of charm happening in that movie. And then JJ kind of tried to do both in Rise of Skywalker, and but I could use some depth. I could use some main course. I don't just want my Star Wars to be cheese, right? But anywho, so those are thoughts on that. But I found a different interview today, literally before recording this.
Yeah.
Where I think I'd heard this before, but I'd never seen it commented on by the guy it's about. But George Lucas's filmmaking friend, just casual friend named Francis Ford Coppola, inspired Han Solo. For those of you that don't know who Francis Ford Coppola is, he directed The Godfather Part 2, and The Godfather Part 3, and a bunch of other movies, but not the least of which being Bram Stoker's Dracula, which I highly recommend because you should watch the fantastic performance from Gary Oldman and the worst performance of Keanu Reeves' career. You have to watch all of it. It's all there, and it's all terrible, and it's so fun. But anyway...
Terrible, but amazing and crazy and...
the worst British accent ever put to film from Keanu. I know where the bastard sleeps, in Carfax Abbey. And I was like, wow, that is so bad. So, anyway, but supposedly he inspired Han Solo. The quote from Francis Ford Coppola about it was, because George felt that I just took crazy, reckless chances and would jump off a mountain without knowing what was down there to land on, and that I would end up with no money. So it was, when you look at Luke Skywalker, George Lucas, George has been very transparent about how these movies are him.
Yeah.
And in many ways, Luke is kind of a self-insert character, as every writer has when they write something. The main character is an aspect of themselves. Han Solo is a little older than Luke, as Francis Ford is a little bit older than George. He's kind of a mentor to Luke, but not really.
Yeah.
Same as Francis Ford was with George and stuff. They collaborated on Apocalypse Now. Mm-hmm. But I like the idea that George kind of saw Francis Ford Coppola as the shooting from the hip type of guy, while he was the maybe a little more reserved Luke Skywalker. So, Zach, thoughts on that before we get to the next quote?
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize how close they were until reading this interview. You know, it's crazy that time of filmmaking, how many of these just giant filmmakers were very close friends or went to college together or were just like collaborating and, you know, creating film studios together and all that. And so I think it's kind of fun that it's like, hey, cool. Like this is my buddy Francis. He's going to be Han Solo. I'm going to be Luke Skywalker. And the person my wife is going to be Princess Leia. Actually, never mind. That's my sister.
Maybe. Well, that opens up a whole can of worms, so let's not.
Well, originally the love triangle was there. For that first movie.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think it's kind of fun, and I love that Francis Ford Coppola views himself as Han Solo as well. He's like, "Hey, that's me."
Yeah, I am him. Yes. So then he goes on later in the interview, and I have seen this sentiment also before from him, or I've heard of it, but I've never actually. Again, I haven't read it. So in this interview. They went on to ask him about like how he feels about George Lucas's career, because kind of like we've said, they were buddies when George was coming out of USC. They founded American Zoetrope together, which was kind of their like indie filmmaker production company. But they asked him about how Francis Ford felt about George's career, because he has expressed before that he's kind of not super happy with it. And the quote is, "If I feel sadness, it is that he didn't make the other movies he was going to make. George is a truly brilliant, talented person. Just look at American Graffiti and see all the innovation. We should have had more." What I've seen earlier other places was Coppola saying that George had all these ideas for movies. Then he made Star Wars, and every movie he made after that was Star Wars. And he was like, why didn't you do all these other things? So, Zach, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't disagree. You know, actually, Star Wars did find me this week because I was talking about this with somebody at work, and how George Lucas is an idea man. He is an idea man. Yeah. He is like, okay, cool. I have this big space idea. Cool. Let's run that. I'm going to bring in a director to help me direct it, or somebody to help me write it. And then we're going to make it great. And then you got to the prequels, and he surrounded himself with yes men. And they were all just like, you're great. You made Star Wars. Write all the dialogue. No. But if you look at him, like all of the things he's been involved with have kind of been hits. I mean, American Graffiti isn't a huge hit, but it is, when you look back at like the history of cinema. Indiana Jones, huge, like, and he helped write that too. Like everything we also, people forget that he helped found DreamWorks, you know? And if you look at it, he's a huge idea guy. So I agree. I would agree with Francis Ford Coppola. I would love to see what other ideas he had that he didn't do, that he probably was like, hey, what if we made a movie about, you know, so-and-so and this and this, and Francis Ford Coppola was probably like, that's a fantastic idea. Okay, cool, I'm gonna go make another Star Wars. And you're like, wait, no, make the other idea too. And so what about you?
And it's, yeah, I mean, I agree and I don't disagree. Like, I think that when he struck, let's face it, actual solid gold with the first Star Wars movie, we wouldn't have so much of the innovation that we have today were it not for him to continue to build the Star Wars brand. Yeah. Right? We, and everybody that we know, edits YouTube videos and shorts and TikToks and everything else because nonlinear editing exists, because George Lucas pioneered nonlinear editing.
Yeah.
We have digital film, movies shot on digital, because George Lucas pioneered that. We have full CGI characters because George Lucas pioneered that. That was and most of those things came in the years between the originals and the prequels, where he was like, I'm going to build my empire and I'm going to move film forward.
Yeah.
So while he didn't direct more, like, one of the George Lucas misses that we don't really talk about is more American Graffiti. American Graffiti might be the best return on investment movie ever. I saw an interview where they made it for like nothing.
Yeah.
Because they just shot at night in a California town. All the light they used was from keeping storefronts open. It cost nothing to make that movie, and it was huge. And then they made more American Graffiti, the sequel, and it made 10 cents.
I didn't even realize that movie existed.
Because it's not great. Well, American Graffiti was about, like, it was very hopeful, and it was what it's like to be a kid in 1962 and pre-Vietnam War and all that stuff. And then more American Graffiti was, well, then you get into the late 70s and life didn't really work out as you're faced with the trials of middle age. And people went, wait, what? This is depressing. And George was like, yeah, that's the point. You know, so that's why you've never heard of that movie.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say, like, he's flawed, don't love him. But, like, he is so creative and he is so fearless that he takes weird shots sometimes. Like his favorite Clone Wars episode, Sunny Day in the Void.
Which is the droids. Which is the droids one, right?
Which is the droids having an existential crisis on a planet of white sand and white sky. And one droid tells the only organic creature in the episode to jump off a cliff. He's like, you should jump. What would happen? And I was just like, and then George was like, yeah, it's my favorite episode. And it's like,
I also think George says things to make fans go crazy. You know?
I really don't. I honestly think that's his favorite because I think maybe sometimes, but I think that honestly, because you can see that interview with him and Filoni where that was where he thought they were being the most fearless and the most interesting and the most weird. Like he likes weird stuff. Now, him being an idea guy, I think it's absolutely correct. And I think that if you caught him in the right mood, he'd probably agree. But there is the potential that one day we will see a bunch of George Lucas movies that he didn't necessarily intend for anybody to see. I think it was at the red carpet for Force Awakens. They said, what are you doing next? And he gave an interview. He's like, I'm going to make a bunch of small tone poem films that nobody will want to watch that are just for me. That no one's going to see. So there might be some weird indie films out there that 30 years, 40, 50 years from now will surface and we're like, what was he like going for?
Can you imagine being an actor on one of those films and being like, yeah, I worked with George Lucas. Oh yeah, can I see it? Nope. It's like, who knows? But anywho, so that's some Francis Ford Coppola quotes for you. As for something just so strange, something else that I discovered this morning on the press tour for Captain America: Brave New World, in which Harrison Ford is playing General Ross. Yeah, General Ross.
Or is it President Ross now?
In this movie, it's President Ross. But
okay. I was going to say I'm falling off
from the comics. It's General Ross, who is Red Hulk. Which is not a spoiler. It's all over the trailer. But
yeah, it's all over the trailer. And they ask him a Red Hulk question. And the question is that the interviewer is Jake's Takes on YouTube. Love his channel. It's good stuff. But he asks Harrison with kind of a twinkle in his eye, acknowledging that it's probably going to set him off. He's like, who would win in a fight between the normal Hulk and the Red Hulk? And Harrison responds like this.
Which Hulk is going to win in a fight, Red Hulk or Green Hulk? Because I would imagine a question like that falls into a category.
It does fall into a category, falls into the who shot first category. So the answer is Greedo.
So, Zach, what are your responses to that?
So Matt sent me this morning before we're starting podcast, and I'm like, okay, cool. Harrison Ford's probably saying something like, it's a very Han Solo person or something. But then he goes, Greedo shot first. And I was like, what? What? This is going to set the internet on fire. I think I guess he was just like, yeah, if that's what George wanted, he edited it that way. It's his movie. Greedo shot first. But Han shot first. Come on.
I don't think that's what he's saying. I think what he's saying is it falls into this same stupid category. I don't care. The answer is whatever happens in the movie.
Yeah.
Grow up. I love that it's 40 years of Harrison Ford having to in his mind, having to answer fanboy questions, just going, "This is stupid. Grow up." I think it's because you can see the rage on his face. I think it is so funny, and then also that he's like, "I don't care." The answer is what happens in the movie, because I think he got asked something similar, or no, there was an interview. It might have happened several times where people have asked him, "Harrison, who shot first?" And he goes, "I don't care."
Yeah, it's funny that
moves on.
An actor who is in so many different fandoms to be the least fan of any of those fandoms.
Yeah. Well, but it's Simon Pegg had a really great story about being at Comic-Con in I think like 2009 or something. He was promoting Paul, the movie where he's voicing an alien, and I forget who finds him in the desert, whatever. And as he's walking off the Hall H stage, like this is backstage, Harrison Ford is walking on with Jon Favreau to go promote Cowboys and Aliens. And apparently they like met, and Harrison Ford was like, "Simon, I'm a big fan of your work." And according to Simon Pegg, what he said was, "Han Solo," and ran away from him. So Harrison Ford being the guy that he is, like just an actual like guy that like flies planes and is a fully functioning man, when he's having interactions like that with like actual Hollywood people, when it's been 40 years of having to put up with nerds just not being able to exist in front of him, he's going to get bitter, and I'm never not going to think it's funny.
Yeah.
To give him credit, later on in this same interview, I do recommend watching the whole thing. It's like 3 minutes. He does talk about how these stories are important, these like nerdy stories, and that while actors make them because it's fun to make and it's fun for the audience, there has to be a human element in it. There has to be an element of honesty to the performance, and that makes it actually meaningful, because he said if you're not feeling it, then you're just watching it, and it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And I thought that was cool.
That's a good sum up. If we ever get to interview Han Solo, I have my Han Solo. If we ever get to interview Harrison Ford.
Not if we're going to call him Han Solo. Hello, Mr. Han Solo. Will you come be on our Star Wars podcast?
Yeah.
No.
My question is going to be, so, Mr. Ford, do you ever miss carpentry? And just because he was a carpenter at the time that he got Han Solo. So it's like, let's take it completely left field and just ask him, this was your day job. You ever miss it?
Probably says something like, I still do it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have reached the big portion of our episode. We're going to take our interview template and run Matt through the gauntlet. We have gotten perspectives from other people, but we have never given our perspective before and our backstory with Star Wars. We did me last week, and so this week is Matt's turn. So without further ado, Matthew Beutner, where were you when you first saw Star Wars, or what is your first Star Wars memory?
So last week we interviewed you, and you gave a wildly similar answer. I literally don't remember the first time that I heard about or saw Star Wars. I got nothing. I must have been so young that it's just like the original trilogy has always been something that I've just known.
Yeah.
I've known. 2 + 2 is 4. Darth Vader is Luke Skywalker's father. I've never not known those movies. I must have been tiny. But I have so many memories from being a kid. I remember being in my uncle's van, and I had to have been like 5. And he said, "Quick, push that button, we'll go to Lightspeed." I remember being interviewed as a child. I was 7 at this point, or might have been 8. in line for Star Wars A New Hope Special Edition at the Carmike Cinemas in Denton, Texas, which is a theater that doesn't exist anymore. And I got interviewed for the paper because I had Star Wars tennis shoes on, and Darth Vader was like the soul of the shoe. Don't remember what happened to those shoes, but there are the reason I have a Star Wars podcast is I've never not liked this stuff.
Yeah.
And there are more memories of my childhood that I could even like recall for you, just not when I first saw it. I don't know. There's more than I can even remember. But I ask my family all the time, I'm like, hey, who showed me this first? Because you equal parts made and ruined my life by showing me these movies. Yeah. Who did this? Who do I need to thank and punch in the face? And they're all like, I don't know. You just saw it at some point. But it's never been something that I haven't absolutely loved. So nice. There's my answer.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. All right. So I'm actually curious about this because I don't know if I know this official answer. But Matt, who is your favorite hero?
So it's the basic answer that's also the old person answer now. But my favorite hero, period, is Luke Skywalker. Fans of the podcast will know my very emotional reaction to his depiction in different Star Wars medias, but it begins and ends with Luke Skywalker for me. I'm also aware that it is absolutely in part because he was my first.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he was probably the first hero's journey that I ever saw. But what has continued to make him my favorite hero, my favorite protagonist in all of fiction, is his journey. And to be honest, my specific interpretation of his journey, that he goes from the dork, he goes from us, of like, but I was going to go to Tashi Station to pick up some power converters, that he goes from that to defeating his enemy, defeating Darth Vader, and then realizing if I kill him, I'm going to become him. I'm going to continue the cycle of violence, throwing his weapon away, and that's what makes him a Jedi. That's what completes his quest. I'm going to become a Jedi like my father by not killing my father. And that becoming a man of peace and a man of compassion and a man of second chances and of faith and of all that stuff. I'm going to trust that my friends can take care of themselves, so I'm going to leave them with the Ewoks, and I'm going to go try and save my dad, and then I'm going to get really close to failing. Not that this is his plan. I'm going to get really close to failing and ruining everything and killing my dad and going, no, wait, no, right, I came to save him, even if he's irredeemable.
Yeah.
I love him. I believe in him. Nothing the Emperor can do is going to change that. I'm going to turn off this weapon. I'm going to throw it to the side. And even if you kill me, I'm a Jedi now, because I'm not going to kill him no matter what, and nothing is going to make me do that.
Yeah.
That's, in my opinion, that is the best version of the hero's journey that we have ever had in anything ever. I do like the sequels. I don't like that it ends with Rey melting Palpatine's face off. Like, that's the anti-message of what we got in Return of the Jedi, right? That, like, you know, I am a Jedi like my father before me, but what makes her all the Jedi is melting him down to atoms? But anyway, not to build something up by taking other stuff down. But it's just he's the best. Harry Potter gets close, right? Same thing, self-sacrifice, right? But just that specific character arc of goes from a nerd to someone that's a little overconfident, that fails, that learns that you have to listen to your mentors. That's what The Empire Strikes Back is about.
Yeah.
You have to listen to them. To Return of the Jedi, sometimes you have to move beyond them. You shouldn't kill your dad, like Obi-Wan told you to. You have to find faith, you have to find peace, you have to find your own way of doing things. I just absolutely love it. So there's my Luke Skywalker novel.
Nice.
and that's why he's my favorite.
Print that, post it on the wall. Great answer. And of course,
Thanks.
Harry Potter comes close. It's Star Wars and Lord of the Rings put together.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on the flip side, who is your favorite villain? And why is it Darth Vader?
My man, I am torn on this because I have to think about this in two ways. This is a cheat. I'm sorry. My favorite villain in terms of being a villain, it's Palpatine.
Oh, okay.
It is Palpatine. My favorite villain in terms of entertainment value is Darth Maul.
Okay.
Like, he's just, I love both of those characters for different reasons. Palpatine, because he wins. Because before Rise of Skywalker, he is the best, most successful villain in anything ever. He always wins.
Yeah.
He wins all three prequel films, hands down. And he wins Empire Strikes Back and most of Return of the Jedi until the very end.
Yeah.
Because he underestimates the Ewoks, like we all did. But he's the best, right? Darth Maul is so entertaining because he's Sisyphus. He is destined to push the boulder up the hill only for it to roll back down. No matter what he does, he will always fail. And he is stuck in that cycle because he was raised by Palpatine. And because he was taught that power is the path to peace and like getting stuff is the path to feeling good about yourself.
Yeah.
And then even when he gets all the stuff, he's for some reason ends up on Malachor, trapped alone in a cave, trying to get more stuff. I can't pick either of them. Mm-hmm. They're both my favorites, but for those different reasons. Palpatine, because he is the ultimate manipulator. He is the ultimate strategist. He's the best puppet master that really I've seen in much of anything. Until the Rise of Skywalker. I am here, and I want to tell you where I am so that you can all come and kill me. And I've created a fleet of Death Stars because we're out of ideas. Like that, okay. I mean, it's fun. It's a fun movie. But anyway.
Do you remember when Vader said, I am your father? Watch it when I say I'm your grandfather.
And it's better because I'm grand. So, yeah, there's that side of it that has to be acknowledged. But then Maul, also, I mean, just the look of Darth Maul.
Oh, yeah.
He could not be more quintessentially evil.
Yeah.
Prototypical evil. Comes from George Lucas telling the Lucasfilm concept artist, draw your nightmares. Just go, draw your nightmares, and I'm going to pick my favorite one.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Darth Maul, right? Just everything, and then being portrayed, we talked about it last week, by Ray Park, who was a stunt performer.
Yeah.
Not an actor. That's why he is instantly so physically imposing. Mm-hmm. Right? And he's so differentiated from Dooku, who's the political manipulator, and Vader, who's the stoic, just like, bulldozer.
Yeah.
He's the juggernaut. He's the get out of my way because I'm going to punch you to death if you don't get out of my way. So I love both those villains. I can't decide. The biggest reason I love Maul so much, to be fair, is all of the characterization of him in wider canon.
Yeah.
Clone Wars, Rebels, Solo, A Star Wars Story. Mm-hmm. He showed up from time to time. Yes, which was a Clone Wars story. Yeah. If you haven't read the Son of Dathomir comic, that's our canon recommendation for the day.
Oh, yeah.
Go read the Son of Dathomir comic. It is so fun. Villains fighting villains. You find out the fate of Mother Talzin. It's kind of important. So, kind of gives away what happens to her. But either way, check out that comic book. It rocks. So I talked about it to death, but I debated who I was going to choose between them, and I can't.
Nice.
Because I love them both for those reasons. So Palpatine and Maul.
Nice. All right, well, we've gone serious. Let's go a little silly. Who is your favorite random alien and or background character?
So, again, I've got to cheat. There's two. And they're from the most recent Star Wars theatrical release.
Oh, really?
Claude the mechanic on the Falcon, he's only in that opening sequence with Poe and Finn and Chewie and R2.
Oh,
he's just that ridiculous
thing.
Like, I love him. He's so stupid. He doesn't have any arms. And there's lines in a different novel where it's like, how can he be a mechanic? He doesn't even have arms. It's so funny. Star Wars shouldn't make sense, guys.
Yeah.
And the way that it shouldn't make sense is with the background aliens. They should be absolutely preposterous. What makes Star Trek special is that it's science fiction, and you can get into the science of it, and you can have it make sense and raise interesting questions. What makes Star Wars special is that it can be really deeply emotional and also so deeply stupid and fun and just ridiculous, and it's wonderful for that. My other favorite is I don't know the character's name, but Lando's driver in their like tank in Rise of Skywalker, where Lando says something like "keep us moving," and then it cuts to the cockpit and it's this ostrich looking thing that just goes "okay" and closes the door. I love it. It's literally just an ostrich. It's so dumb. I don't even know its name, but I laughed so much at both of those characters. And it's the Ewoks of it all. It comes from George Lucas. Just the silly whimsy. These things should be silly sometimes. I love these glupshitos. I'll call them what they are in Star Wars, and I want more of them sometimes. I don't know either of that character's name, but just for being ridiculous in an instantly funny way, those two are my favorites.
Yeah, I just sent you a picture of Claude that we'll throw down below because it shows the joy on John Boyega's face of just being like, look at this guy.
Yeah, it's the best. It's like, it's just so fun. I love when, again, these things should not be afraid of being fun.
Yeah. Nice.
So there you go.
All right. Well, continuing the fun, what color would your lightsaber be?
Fans of the podcast know, blue all the way, baby. Blue for sure. Not even really a discussion. And I have constructed my lightsaber. I have been to Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Nice.
And built my Jedi weapon. And the only other option that I could remotely consider would be white, just because I love the storytelling of that. I love that. It is a healed lightsaber, that it is a kyber crystal that has been bled to be red and has now been purified to be white. That's also, in a way, it's like it's the most pure lightsaber you can have.
Yeah. Like
there's none of your personal kind of effect to it. It's just the pure crystal color. Yeah. Right? But it's blue. It's blue. Blue is my favorite color. Also, probably because blue was Luke's first lightsaber when I was a kid in Empire Strikes Back. It's probably deep in my subconscious somewhere that I can't even really access. But the idea of a blue laser sword is fantastic. But what I definitely forgot to do was I do have two lightsabers in my possession at my home, not here. There is my custom constructed at Galaxy's Edge, and when I got this job as an academy director and I had disposable income for the first time, my first purchase wasn't a car, wasn't a house, wasn't anything like that. I went and bought me the Luke Skywalker Return of the Jedi Black Series lightsaber.
I remember.
For like $100 or whatever, and lit it up and discovered. I was like, if you take a video of it in with all the lights off, it's got the white gleam in the middle where it looks like a lightsaber in the movie. Cool. So I have both of them because when I'm honest with myself, I'm Luke Skywalker all the way.
Yeah.
But to get specific, not just the color, the hilt, my dream lightsaber hilt would pretty much be the one that I built at Galaxy's Edge. I'll get a picture of it. Well, I've shown it on the podcast before.
Yeah.
But I went the route where it's like earth tones and it's made of wood and stuff. That would be like my favorite lightsaber. Very similar to Gunji.
Yeah, Gunji's lightsaber is cool.
Where it's made out of wood, where again it's got those. It's very natural. It's a spiritual thing more than like metal and gears and wires and stuff.
Yeah.
So there's my in-depth answer.
Nice. I bet we get more of those type of lightsabers in that Dawn of the Jedi movie, if we get one.
Oh, gosh, I hope. That would make me so excited.
All right. Well, continuing down the fun route, if you could have a Star Wars tattoo, what would it be? Because I'm pretty sure you don't have one.
I don't have a single tattoo on my body, and that's not I'm not trying to, like, show off. I don't have a single tattoo. I'm just not a big tattoo guy. I debated this because I love the visuals of Star Wars, but I am a dorky fan of the written word, and the only tattoo idea I've ever come up with, and this is so cheesy, but I'm going to say it. It would be a combination of two quotes, and functioned as almost like a yin-yang type thing.
Okay.
We've heard the dark side version of this quote, right, or the negative version of this quote. We got the positive version this year, or last year, 2024. So the negative version: fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering, right? All that to say, fear is the root of all evil, right? In my opinion. But so we got that quote from Yoda in The Phantom Menace, and it's like, what's the destination? What's the first step on the path to sadness and suffering? Fear.
Yeah.
Right? So the opposite of that came in the book this last year from John Jackson Miller, The Living Force. And I thought this was just a really wonderful phrase. Courage leads to peace. Peace leads to love. Love leads to healing. Now, both of those quotes you can make fun of, and I've seen dumb people make fun of them. You could just say anything leads to anything and think you're being philosophical. It's like, no, that's stupid. If you are giving into fear, you are actively failing, because the best things in life, almost all the time, are on the other side of your little whiny fears, right? Almost always. Everybody that has ever gone skydiving talks about how it is pure bliss.
It's the best.
Everything leading.
I've been twice.
I'm absolutely terrified, and I know that I need to sack up and go, because if I could have a superpower, it would be to fly. And I know that skydiving is not flying; it is falling out of a perfectly good airplane, which doesn't make sense to me.
It's falling with style.
Well done. But the best things in life are on the other side of fear. The best things in life are when you get out of your comfort zone, right? That's when you feel alive. That's when you are there for not just yourself, but for other people. That's what courage leads to, right? Fear leads to anger. When you're afraid of things, when you're afraid of losing things, you're going to get angry when you lose them.
Yeah.
And when you get angry when you lost stuff, you are now hateful towards the people or the things that made you lose what you were afraid of losing. And then hate just always leads to bad things for everybody, you and everybody else.
Yeah.
As opposed to when you choose courage. When you choose courage and to step out in bravery, to step out in faith, you're going to be a more peaceful person. And when you're a more peaceful person, you're going to have a lot more love to give, not only towards the success that you've just had in your life, right?
Yeah.
But for everybody else around you. And that's going to heal everybody. So there's my cheese ball, I guess, I don't even know, like Pinterestable tattoo idea. Where I'd do like a yin-yang thing, and I'd have the courage quote with the fear quote underneath it. And that, like, those are kind of the two battles that we're always fighting.
Yeah.
Right? Courage or fear. So there's my cheese ball answer.
Well, we'll do a stretch goal one day where if we make enough money on the podcast, I'll fly down, we'll go skydiving, and we'll do the camera that sits on Matt like a GoPro and catch all of his fear leading to fun.
That's a pretty good idea. I will say I've been indoor skydiving.
Huh.
So, and that was really cool. It was funny though, as soon as I stepped out, have you ever done that?
No, I haven't done the indoor, I've done outdoor.
You've done the real stuff.
Yeah, twice.
Yeah. I hyperventilated a little bit when I first stepped out. I was like, and which, I don't know why I explained what hyperventilating is. You know what hyperventilating is, everybody. And then I had to actively just calm myself down, and I was like, oh, I can breathe just fine.
You know what my instructor told me when I first went skydiving? He goes, when you jump out of the plane for the first time, scream. He's like, just yell, because you're going to feel the fear anyway. And also, a lot of people, when they first jump out of planes, because they're so scared, they go, and then they don't breathe, and then they like can pass out. So he's like, if you just go out screaming, you're gonna naturally have to and then you're breathing. So
just the idea of jumping out of a perfectly good airplane, like
you only fall at a speed of 125 to 132 miles an hour, something like that.
Well, really, it's that we have options. It's that either I jump out of a perfectly good airplane or I hold a tarantula.
I think the skydiving one is more fun.
That's the thing. I don't, as much as I just gave my really wonderful quote about like the best things in life are on the other side of fear. I don't know that holding a spider would lead to a good moment in my life. Anyways,
back to the
conquer
interview.
your fears unless you're afraid of them.
All right. What is your favorite Star Wars story?
Man, I love this question and hate this question because I have to choose. It's not. I knew this question was coming. We made these questions, the two of us, like 6 months ago. It's Star Wars Episode 4: A New Hope. It's for a whole lot of reasons, not just the amount of things that they got right.
Yeah.
From like a real world perspective, the making a movie perspective, the tiny budget they made it on, the amount of things that they got right, the impact that it still has on movies today and on entertainment today.
Yeah.
It was the first mega blockbuster. It was the second in that Jaws was the first blockbuster ever. But my dad talks about how that was the first time that a movie was at the Bettendorf, Iowa Cineplex for more than like a month.
Wow.
And it was there for a year.
Wow.
And he was like, I remember he told me that he was like riding his bike past the theater one day and went, Star Wars is still there? It came out a year ago. And then he went and saw it, but
cool.
Again, like, yeah, but it was like, wait, what? Wild. And just I'm all about the clarity through simplicity and focused storytelling. You don't get more clear, you don't get more focused, you don't get more universal and wonderful than Star Wars Episode 4.
Yeah.
It's The Wizard of Oz. It's The Lord of the Rings. It's Harry Potter. It takes from Dune, clearly.
Yeah.
And it takes from Flash Gordon, and it takes from Buck Rogers, and it takes from all that stuff. But it does it all so simplistically and so universally. But it's also the storytelling is so good that you're like, oh yeah, the Clone Wars, cool, great. Tell me more, Obi-Wan. And not, what? Like, it handles so much exposition without making it feel like exposition because it's characters having conversations.
Yeah.
They never do well, as you know, the Clone Wars happened 20 years ago. No, it's just Obi-Wan talks about how he was a Jedi, and Luke's response is, you fought in the Clone Wars? Right? Not, you were a Jedi. It's just, I'm going to ask you another thing that I know that the Jedi did. Well, so we're finding out the Jedi are cool and that they did cool stuff. George didn't know what the Clone Wars was in 1977. He didn't have to know. He was telling a cool story. And every ending moment in Star Wars, the standard, like, every Twilight of the Soul climactic moment, in my opinion, in every novel, comic, cartoon, movie ever, the standard that you have to live up to is Luke Skywalker on the trench run. R2 has gotten shot. He is in Vader's sights. The Death Star is about to blow up the rebellion. He is alone, being told by Obi-Wan to turn off his targeting computer and trust in the Force. And it's all down to that. And he is alone.
Yeah.
Everything has that standard to live up to. Obviously, then immediately afterwards, all the character arcs start to resolve because Han comes back and saves him. Luke makes the shot, right? Trusts in the Force. Use the Force, Luke. It all has to live up to that. Coupled with John Williams' score, that moment is perfect.
Yeah.
And the whole movie builds to that perfectly, right? That's just it's easily my favorite Star Wars story. It's the best one. It's the only one that stands on its own.
Yeah.
And without it, we wouldn't. I think I talked about this a couple weeks ago. We wouldn't still be here talking about it almost 50 years later, right?
Yeah.
We might talk about that movie and what a fun little movie it was, but it's the only one that stands on its own, and it launched a universe and it changed storytelling, at least in the Western world. So you don't get the MCU without Star Wars. You don't.
You don't get sequels.
You don't get sequels without Star Wars. You don't get big budget genre films without Star Wars. You don't get Star Trek movies without Star Wars. They were making Star Trek a TV show. It was going to be a rebooted TV show. Then the Star Wars movie came out, and they were like, oh, we will make it a movie like y'all were originally asking for. So, yeah. Now, I'm going to cheat. That's my favorite in-universe story. My favorite out-of-universe story is, and this is a much wider category, but it's this podcast.
Oh.
It's getting to talk to other people about it.
Yeah.
It's The Force of Others. That's my favorite Star Wars story. It's when I get to talk to people, what does this mean to you?
Yeah.
Because that's everything that I get out of Star Wars. It's stories about growing up. It's stories about choosing faith over fear. It's stories about, trust your instincts. Your focus determines your reality. That's what this is to me, right? But what is it to you guys? What is it to everybody else? That's my, and then friendships coming out of it. You and Lance and so many other people.
Yeah.
Where know me as the Star Wars guy and stuff. Not that that's all that you know me as, but we talked about last week, kind of one of the first foundations of our friendship was when we went to Star Wars Fan Days 14 years ago.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Lance. Like early in our friendship, I showed him a Star Wars movie, and then 20 years ago now, we go to see Episode 3 at midnight.
Yeah.
And in 2005, and that was his kind of really entrance into Star Wars fandom. It's the podcast. It's talking to people. Those are my favorite Star Wars stories. When I find out what it means to other people and how it's impacted their life.
Nice.
So there's my really, really long answer.
Well, speaking of long answers, what does Star Wars mean to you?
Yeah, I forgot that was the next question because I kind of answered it. But what it means to me is, if it's not obvious, I like it a little bit, but it is my favorite fictional franchise, obviously, for so many reasons.
Yeah.
The focused on science fiction, not science fantasy.
Science fantasy, not science fiction.
Oh, God, yeah, I said the wrong thing. Oh, no.
Matt loves the analog little computers in there.
They're also cool, but the science fantasy allows for Claude.
Yeah.
And I'll take Claude over binary math like all day.
Yeah.
There's guest star aliens on a Star Trek Next Generation episode that their names are 01 and 10 because they can only communicate in binary. And I was like, are you kidding me? And the whole episode is about how they can communicate with them. And I was like, okay, we're going to go ahead and watch something else today. But anyway, I'll take Claude all day. But science fantasy, not science fiction. The faster and more intense pacing. The lightsaber is the coolest weapon of all time. Again, the spiritual nature of it, the universal storytelling. Just that it's hopeful. There's a George Lucas quote that Filoni has talked about a bunch, that most importantly, these stories have to be hopeful because kids need it.
Yeah.
That is so, so important. Anyway, I won't go into that. There are Star Wars stories that are not hopeful. That is why it bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not saying that all these things have to be exactly the same, but I would appreciate if there was tonal consistency to a franchise. It's been pretty tonally consistent for a really, really long time, especially when it's for the intention that if these stories are for everybody, make them for everybody. Don't pander to kids, but make it hopeful. I'm talking about a different story. But that's what Star Wars means to me.
Yeah.
Also, this is so silly. Star Wars is why I do what I do. Star Wars is why I love storytelling. Star Wars is why I love teaching. Star Wars has so many life lessons in this silly franchise about space wizards and monsters. It's all there. It is so deep, and it's all there if you look for it.
Yeah.
So I would absolutely not be a writer and an actor and a storyteller and a theater teacher if not for these goofy movies. I'd be doing something totally different. But just this franchise and falling absolutely in love with it and poring over it way more than anything else, at least in terms of fiction. It's why I do what I do and why I am who I am. Yeah. So that's what Star Wars means to me.
Nice. Good answer.
Thanks,
All
man.
right. We've reached the ridiculous Rathtar random hard trivia question. The ridiculous Rathtar. I got stumped last week, so I got a little vindictive. And I have 2 questions. I'm debating which one to ask you, because one I think you'll get and one I think you won't.
Well, we've established that I'm a little cocky when it comes to trivia, mostly because I know way too much.
Yeah.
So let's bring the pain and try to put me in my place a little bit.
So if you answer this first one correct, I will ask you the second one, because this first one I think you're going to get. But what in Star Wars, A New Hope, your favorite Star Wars story, what is the unit number when Luke tells 3PO to open the pressure maintenance hatch in the trash compactor?
It starts with 326.
Yep.
326 3827?
Yep, you got it. Nice.
Yes!
Okay.
If it comes to quotes, I'm probably going to be able to pull it out just because I've seen these movies.
Yeah, I thought you were
more times than I
going to
could
get that
ever
one.
imagine.
So now here comes the pain.
Okay, fun.
In the sequel trilogy, name one Knight of Ren. Give me one name. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and Kylo doesn't count.
Ooh, I was gonna say Kylo. And here's the problem. I was about to say Unkar, and that's not. That's Unkar Plutt. That's Rey's keeper. I've read the Duel of Fate script. I've read the Duel of the Fate script, and those names get mixed up with the names that have been in other reference material in my mind, and so...
Yeah, you just gotta name one.
And they're all, like, hard, like, 2-syllable names. Trudgeon?
Yeah, good job.
Yes!
That's one of them.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got nothing else.
Yeah, good job.
Nothing else.
Wow. So the names of the Knights of Ren, if anyone is curious, we have Apalek, Kuruk, Trudgeon, Ushar,
right.
Cardo, and Virkul.
Yeah, that's right.
Virkul's in some comics, so.
Yeah. Well, and I remember there was a rumor when Benicio del Toro got cast in Last Jedi. There was a rumor that he was playing Vikram Fett. And I think that came from somebody seeing Vikram or Vikrul, and probably just some scooper slapped Fett on the back of it, and we're like, he's Boba Fett's kid.
Yeah.
Anyway, neither here nor there.
Well, good job. You passed with flying colors.
Man.
I'm truly in awe.
Oh, don't be. I'm not getting out of here with my lunch money.
All right. So we have a new portion for our listeners. If this is your first time, welcome to our official Star Wars Game Time. We're going to do some blind rankings. I have a set for Matt. He does not know the characters that he's about to rank. He does. I will say, Matt was like, oh, what if I do like Jedi? I took that, and instead of doing Jedi that we know a lot about, I took Jedi that are in the prequel series. That all have names that we all that Matt will know, but that don't necessarily have lines, or maybe they're in the Clone Wars TV series, but not. I was like, I'm not gonna do like Yoda and Qui-Gon and Luke, because that's no fun. So we're gonna go 1 through 5. I will
blind ranking.
So you get 5 characters.
And what I'm ranking, 1 is the best, 5 is the worst,
yes,
right?
5 is the worst. And you can put them in any order, but once you have secured the spot in the order, you cannot take it away. Yep.
Okay.
So,
all right, here we go.
Your first Jedi.
Yeah.
Kit Fisto.
Ooh. Well, of the Glup Shido Jedis, oh gosh.
He's the one with the long, if you don't know, listener, he's the one with the long tentacles, a Jamaican accent. Goes to face Palpatine and doesn't get murked right away.
I've always loved me some Kit Fisto, so I'm going to be bold, and I'm going to do what you shouldn't do on a blind ranking. I'm going to go number 1 for Kit Fisto.
Wow.
I love him. He's great.
All right, Kit Fisto's your number 1.
It's going to come back to bite me.
Second Jedi to come in, Ayla Secura.
Ooh. She's the blue Twi'lek, right? Twi'lek, yeah. Never really been a big Ayla Secura fan. I don't know. The character's never really. I never really got excited by stories like outside of like other stories she was in.
Yeah.
So I'll say like 3.
Okay, 3. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. The third one to become, for you to rank, Luminara and Dooley.
Oh, I do like Luminara.
Mm-hmm. Got some great Clone Wars arcs.
So I'll say, oh gosh, I'm really putting myself into a corner here. I'm going to say 2.
Ooh. Alrighty. All right. The fourth one to come out, Plo Koon.
Oh no!
Yeah.
Plo Koon is, dang it!
Yeah.
He would have been number 1. Oh man. Then I gotta put him at 4. I love me some Plo Koon.
All right.
Some of my favorite Clone Wars stuff. It's him.
Yeah. All right. And number 5, which I think you'll be a little bit happy with.
Yeah.
But Mr. Amagundi. Otherwise known as I'm a-gonna die.
I'm a-gonna die. Honestly, I would have put Ayla at 5, but I'm a-gonna die is 5.
Yeah.
You gotta love it. They did not have a name for the character. They realized he was gonna die, and they made his name a joke.
I'm a-gonna die.
That is really funny. Okay. But all right. So this is the new thing we're adding to the interview, the blind rankings. So Zach, I'm going to have you do a blind ranking real quick.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So it's time for Zach's blind rankings. Same thing. I'm going to give you 5 bounty hunters that you have to rank, 1 being the best, 5 being the worst, and you don't know who I'm going to say. Number 1, Cad Bane.
Ooh, I love Cad Bane. I love his voice. I love his whole thing. But I think you're going to try and get me later with someone who I might like better. So I'm going to put Cad Bane at 2.
Okay. Cad Bane is 2. All right. So your second blind ranked, Jango Fett.
Jango. Ooh, okay. I actually don't have a huge affinity for Jango,
right on.
surprisingly. I'm going to put him at 4.
Okay,
yeah.
Jango at 4. All right, now a character that we have already talked about once on this episode, Greedo 5. No elaboration?
No. McClunky.
Okay.
There we go.
McClunky. Okay, so Boba Fett.
Oh, okay. Well, who's going to be the 5th? We'll put him. I do love Boba Fett, but I'm hoping.
So we got
I'm
one
hoping
and
there's
3
one.
open.
I'm hoping there's one that I like better. I'm going to put him at 3. No.
So your number 1 confirmed bounty hunter in the Star Wars universe is Toro Calican, the bounty hunter from the Gunslinger episode from the Mandalorian season 1. He's the guy with the earring. And
no,
a character
I hate
that
guy. I hate him more than anything. No, he would have been like 100. Damn.
Yeah, sorry,
I hate
man.
that guy.
I didn't think that gotcha was going to work as well as it did.
Yeah. I was hoping you were going to say Enzo, the guy with the big hat.
Fans of the podcast will know I almost put your favorite background character in there. I almost put Rumsleg.
Oh, Rumsleg would have been good too. Damn,
Yeah,
he'd been up there.
But no, as soon as I realized, I was like,
no, I hate
oh my
that
God,
guy.
I have to put
episode.
Toro on here. I have to put him on
He's
here.
not even a bounty hunter. He doesn't even get it. He doesn't actually complete a bounty. I don't count him.
He's just a punk with an earring.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so awesome. Well, all right, man. Well, friends and neighbors, I don't think we have time for the mailbag this week.
Nah.
Unfortunately, I think we filled it off.
But we have some really cool ones coming next week. So
We have really, really great ones coming next week
Yeah.
from some friends of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But until then, we hope you're having a wonderful Star Wars Podcast Day. Thank you for listening to us if you made it this far. But celebrate Star Wars Podcast Day. Go find some other Star Wars podcasts. You can find all of us. Look up hashtag Star Wars Podcast Day. And you can find all of the episodes participating this week and celebrate this franchise that we love.
yeah.
And Zach, in the meantime, until we're back next week with another week of Star Wars goodness, where can the people find you? What all do you have going on in your life?
Yeah, best way to find me right now is to email the show, forceofothersradio@gmail.com. I'm in a social media detox that is kind of working. But yeah, best way to find me is to email us. We will respond to your questions either live or through the email. Matt, where can they find you?
The same place.
Yeah.
forceofothersradio@gmail.com. You've heard enough. You heard me talk to death about how much I love Star Wars, but more than anything, I want to find out why you love Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
So send us your questions, send us your thoughts, send us anything about this franchise that we all love, and we'll probably put it on the show. Might even have you on the show if we think it's interesting enough.
Yeah.
And if we got the time in our programming. But you can reach out to the show at Force of Others on Instagram, Twitter, for now, and YouTube. In the comments below, comment, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, do all the things. We will have a contest coming soon.
Yes, we need to figure out
where
the
you
rules.
might be able to win a 1977 vintage Chewie the Wookiee action figure. You listening or you watching could get your own Chewie. Your own original, your own first Chewie made physical for like people to hold and play with. You could get your own piece of Star Wars history once we figure out how we're going to do the contest. And you can also, if you want, reach out to me on Facebook and Instagram at Matt Beutner. But just email the show.
Yeah.
So, and something else that I did completely forget to mention. I do have a very in-depth look at the Battle of Jakku Maxa Series comic coming next week. Also coming next week is my review of the first issue of The Legacy of Vader, Rise of Kylo Ren.
Might just not just be your only in there. I'll try and read that too. We'll we'll have a discussion about it.
At the time of recording, today is February 4th. It will come out tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we will get into that next week, and we will be having a monthly feature on that comic because we stand Charles Soule on this podcast. Go check out that comic book if you have not yet. I'm sure it's going to be awesome. And go check out Darth Vader, Lord of the Sith. Charles Soule's comic run on Vader. It is
good
stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's our episode for this week. Again, I hope you had a wonderful Star Wars Podcast Day. I hope you liked the show. And let us know in the comments below your ranking of the 5 bounty hunters and 5 Jedi that we did for you today. But in the meantime, remember, the Force of Others will be with you.
Always. Toro is not a bounty hunter.
The Force of Others, a Star Wars podcast.